Today, in a 7-2 ruling, the United States Supreme Court struck down a 2004 Arizona law that required would-be voters to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote. In the majority opinion, Justice Antonin Scalia wrote that the Arizona law goes against the National Voter Registration Act's motor voter form, which requires voters to check a box and sign a statement under penalty of perjury, swearing that they are United States citizens. This ruling could affect similar voter ID laws in Kansas, Alabama, and Georgia. But the court left it open for Arizona to appeal to the federal government to add proof of citizenship to its requirements, a move that could complicate things down the road. Shortly after the decision, shrinking violet and Republican Senator Ted Cruz wasted no time writing on Facebook, "This hole in federal statutory law allows non-citizens to register and thereby encourages voter fraud. I will file a common sense amendment to the immigration bill that permits states to require ID before registering voters." Joining me now, MSNBC's Ari Melber and Joy Reid. Hey, Joy, what is the point of the Supreme Court if you had Ted Cruz? I mean, really?
What's the point of having government at all? Let's just have Ted
Just have
rule
Ted
over
Cruz.
us all. Yeah, it's great. I mean, and the thing that's so interesting is that you do have all these laws that are supposedly fixated on stopping non-citizens from voting. But Arizona, when they passed this law, they could only cite 19 cases out of 2.7 million people that had ever been, non-citizens voting. Meanwhile, there were like 35,000 people who weren't allowed to register to vote. And this is like a very serious reality, particularly in states out west where you have Indian reservations, Native American reservations where people may not even have a birth certificate, where you have people born before 1940 who may or may not. Somebody was born at home. There are all these circumstances where you might not have one, and the hardship of having to go get one and pay for one, it's basically a poll tax.
Yeah, and you're talking about Ted Cruz putting forth a common sense amendment, which is a bit like Tom Cruise saying he's going to have like a relaxed and mellow media appearance. Like, I look forward to seeing his common sense. I think this is a significant, but as you pointed out in the lead, potentially limitable ruling.
It's complicated, not just like the movie, but in reality. I mean, it really is. I mean, the door is open for states to actually enact these laws if they get through the appeals process.
Yeah, and Justice Scalia basically in the back half of the opinion gave his advice to whoever might be listening that wants to limit it. But it goes to a tension that's so important in this Supreme Court term and that we've seen throughout American history, which is, are we a democracy where voters pick politicians or where politicians pick voters? And we've seen these efforts again and again. This underlying Proposition 200 in Arizona was passed in 2004, obviously an election year, and it did several things. Not only did it do this vis-a-vis vote by mail, it also did input the first voter ID standards, which unfortunately the Supreme Court has held are constitutional. And voter ID standards, as we've seen and reported, are often motivated by racial animus and often motivated by desire to suppress voters. It's a very serious thing. And next week we're going to see the Voting Rights Act up. Again, a question of whether we're going to let politicians pick the voters.
What I don't understand, Joy, is there's this veil of sort of we're marching against voter fraud, but it's all politics, right? And if you look at 2012, the politics of voter ID laws did not work well for the Republican Party. Yeah. For the first time, a higher percentage of eligible black voters voted than white voters. 2012, 66% of eligible black voters voted. And as you know, we all know at this point, voter ID laws disproportionately target minority, older, and poorer voters. So if that's the strategy, it doesn't seem to be working.
It has the opposite effect. I was in Cuyahoga County like a week before the election, and there were African Americans there who said, look, President Obama disappointed me with the whole gay marriage thing. I'm very religious. I was thinking, you know what, maybe I'll just skip this one. But these Republicans are trying to keep me from the polls, and nothing is going to hold me back. I mean, there was a passion to vote that was partly Obama, but partly just independent of it, and partly Republicans. They motivated a lot of black voters in places like Florida, in places like Ohio. And the thing is that these are galvanizing ideas for the other side. And at the same time, Republicans have to find a way to appeal to Hispanic voters. This is the opposite of doing that. This is saying you can't vote. We don't want you to vote.
Joy and I were just talking about this in the hallway. If we see a conservative Supreme Court come in next week and go at the Voting Rights Act, which Republican senators unanimously supported, which even the Republican Party, in its somewhat nativist form today, doesn't have the heart to oppose. I think it will be bad law and bad jurisprudence. I think politically you will see a tremendous backlash, not only among minority voters, but among a lot of other people who care about voting rights.
It's effectively a referendum on the Republican Party. It puts them in a very difficult place, as does actually Prop 8 and DOMA. But I do want to talk about the weirdness of Arizona for a moment, Joy, because today in Arizona, Republican Governor Jan Jan Brewer signed into law a bill that would expand Medicaid under the President's Affordable Care Act. It was, of course, the right thing to do. Jan Brewer tweeted as much, saying, right thing to do for hashtag AZ. Proud to sign Medicaid restoration into law this morning. I am glad for the people of Arizona. 300,000 more poor Arizona residents are getting coverage because of it. But this, of course, is Jan Brewer, she of eating scorpions for breakfast and wagging her finger at the president. A small bit or a humongous, gigantic, meteor-sized bit of irony descending upon the state of Arizona.
She gets some golf claps.
No, she gets golf claps because, you know, she pulled a Christie. She basically put her state first. Look, and Florida's governor tried to do the same thing. And Rick Scott, you know, his nickname is Voldemort. Like, his whole life was devoted to destroying Obamacare. And he himself also said, look, my hospital interests will go out of business. If you look at big hospital systems in states with lots of retirees, lots of elderly people, like Arizona, like Florida, the hospital interests must have this money. This is almost free money. Actually, for the first 5 years, it is free money.
It is actually
right.
free money.
It's actually free money. And turning it down is insanity. And the idea that any governor would do the opposite of what she's doing is what's crazy, not what she's doing.
Which is why 7 Republican governors have also supported Medicaid, Ari.
Yeah, I think this is where it's going. This is one of those funny things where the national Republican, like Frank Luntz, you know, seminar on what you should do and let me give you good advice, they've gotten a lot of bad advice. Governors are much closer to the people they represent. They have a lot more, basically, interactions with a wider array of their own constituents.
Humans. They have to deal with humans.
I didn't want to go back to Romney lessons, Alex, but it's sort of humanoid contact is what we're seeing here. And parks are a place where people gather. What did you say?
Yeah, the trees are just the right height.
Humanoid contact is good. We can say that definitively this evening.
Some parts of politics and the law, we were talking about some of these decisions are a little convoluted. This is one that is
very simple.
I think governors
free
see
money.
what people want. They see that health care is something people need, and they're not going to just do it to sort of try to do a solid for the National Republican Party forever.
Hashtag no-brainer. Ari Melber and Joy Reid, thank you both for joining me tonight. Coming up, the head of